I saw what you were already doing. I took a peek at it. I was like, yo, this looks like this is something meaningful, something beautiful, something powerful, and so I want to be a part of that. And I think that I think I have everything I need. I'm excited for a rich conversation. I know it's going to be
Yes.
beautiful. I always love any opportunity to share my story and to share my work,
Hmm.
especially with like-minded people, like-spirited people. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, let's give a shout out to the artist whose work is behind you,
yes, that's Sean Garrison. He's
Sean
a
Garrison.
Minneapolis-based, multi-talented artist. He doesn't just do painting; he does a myriad of artistic disciplines. But he's one of my favorite local artists. He's actually a friend and collaborator of mine as well. And
Hmm.
so definitely check him out. Sean Garrison. That's SEAN. Sean Garrison. GARRISON. You can find him online.
Okay. Cool, cool, cool. All right, all right. So, my brother, welcome to the Nana Yayabua podcast, where we explore stories, artistry, and impact of incredible creatives such as yourself. So today we are honored that you, multi-talented Joe Davis, is on with us. So you're a spoken word poet, musician, cultural storyteller, and you blend poetry, music, and stage performance, which is beautiful and very inspiring as well. And not to say the least uplifting. So in today's conversation, my intention is dive into your artistic journey and the meaning of Black excellence, what it means to you, and the power of storytelling and the influence of, say, our ancestry, racism, Africa in your work. Brother Joe,
Mhm.
welcome to the podcast.
Hey, let's go. Yeah.
Hey.
Glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So I see. So you're based in Minneapolis, and that's where majority of your work is. All right.
I do travel though. I travel all across the country. I've been to every state in the United States of America, including Hawaii and Alaska. So I
Except
get
the
around.
51st state.
Oh, which one is that? Which one are we talking about?
That is Trump torment of Canada as the
Oh
51st state.
yeah. Man, we ain't gotta worry about none of that.
Oh my goodness. So
Yeah.
my brother, let's begin with the art of spoken word and music, because you blend the two very beautifully. As before we came on, I was listening back to Poetic Diaspora on stage, and it was a well done production. So first of all, let me say congratulations on that.
Mhm.
Would love to see more of those works.
Yeah.
So what drew you to spoken word poetry, and how has your journey evolved?
Mm, yeah. So it actually started when I was a real little kid. Uh, I would just write these little love letters to my schoolyard crush. Because I teach a lot of students nowadays, and I tell my young students, I say, you all have Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok, and you could talk to each other on your phones. When I was younger, we had to pass notes. We had to sneak notes in class, and I would write poems inside of my love letters to my schoolyard crush, so I could sneak a little kiss behind the swing set. And my friends, they would always tease me. They would say, "Ooh, you gonna get cooties?" And I said, "So what? I want to get cooties." Right? And so it always was like silly and goofy and playful. I was a lover. I poured my love into my poems. But then it actually got more serious because I got really sick when I was still in elementary school. I actually passed out on the bathroom floor. I was rushed to the emergency room, had to be hospitalized. And for several years of my life, I was in and out of the hospital. And
Mm-hmm.
when I was there, I had to reach for the nearest thing that I had to me, and that was my pen and my pad.
Okay.
And I could
Yeah.
just write. I could just write and write and write. And when it was hard for me to talk to my parents or hard for me to talk to my friends or anyone else, I could just pour my heart and my soul into my notebook. And that's when I started writing about what I was struggling through and creating a new world because I like to draw too. So I would come up with
Mm-hmm.
comic books and cartoons and new stories. And what I didn't realize at the time is I was reimagining the
Mm-hmm.
world around me and also reimagining the world inside of me. I think that helped contribute to my healing
Yeah.
as a young boy. I didn't recognize that's what I was doing at the time, but I was tapping into something really deep and I would say even almost spiritual.
Yes. As you speaking, Tyler Perry comes to mind with,
Yeah,
as much as his childhood was as crappy as it is, um he's tapped into it as an adult and given us Madia and all these characters. Now,
yeah,
whether people are okay with him dressing as a female character portraying that, but I love the fact that it's a male portraying a female character, and it's witty and, out of this world. So,
yeah,
and I don't know if he had not done that character, it would be what it is.
yeah,
So it's amazing when we tap into ourselves, the
yeah,
amount of creativity that we do have, and also how healing it is. So now let's go to your conversation that we were having backstage about art and, healing.
yes, yes, yes. Yeah, and so like I said before, I didn't recognize how healing it actually was for me until I got older. I came across a psychotherapist named Viktor Frankl,
Oh,
and so
yes,
he actually
yes,
survived Nazi internment camps.
yes,
His family unfortunately didn't survive, but he
yes,
did, and he later became a psychotherapist, and he studied what
yes.
he called logotherapy.
Therapy,
And so
yes, yes.
logotherapy, logo it means word, right? And
Mm-hmm.
therapy is that healing component. And so he would write about one of his most popular books is called Man's Search for Meaning,
That
and
is
he
true.
talks about how we can find a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in some of our traumatic experiences. And so that there's a whole process and a whole science behind it that I
Mm-hmm.
was tapping into as a child. I was actually
With
metabolizing some of my trauma, processing some of my trauma through writing and using creativity. And so people can do this. People do this all the time, whether it's through writing, whether it's through singing,
journaling,
through dance,
yes,
through painting. I know you talked about how you love to
yes.
paint as well. And so you're getting your emotions out. It's a creative outlet, an emotional outlet that can serve a therapeutic purpose,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's something that I have created space for myself, and that's what I love to do as I travel across the country. And I'm opening up people who normally don't consider themselves as creatives or artists. I'm saying, you know what, you still have something inside of you that you can express creatively. So I want to encourage you and inspire you and motivate you to do that and continue to do that, because you may be surprised by how healing it can be, by how liberating and empowering it can be to actually shape the world around us with beauty and with joy. Even if we've had some tough struggles in our past, we can still
Mm-hmm.
have a new path forward, and that's what I want to help people find.
Yes. And
Yeah,
I was telling somebody today that the Basquiat that we see now, my first painting I ever looked like, what is this? But as I questioned myself, what is this? When the person teaching the painting class said, "Oh, do you paint?" And I
yeah,
said, no. She
yeah.
asked me whether I'm sure. Oh, actually, it's right here. This is the first artwork that I did.
Wow, I love it. That's amazing.
Yes,
I see the
this is
spider web. Is that a spider web?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's the story, if you don't mind sharing? What's the story behind the?
Oh, so
There's always a story.
because I am an Anansi storyteller,
Oh yes,
so
yes, yes. The spider.
the spider. So I was utilizing some of that in the art, and then
Mm,
this ladder depicts, how do you call it, it's a proverb. I can't proverb that owo actually fro. Death's ladder. Everybody
mm,
will climb it. I,
yes.
I will not climb it alone. You will not climb it alone. We
Mm,
shall all climb this ladder at some point.
mm.
Yes. So,
Wow.
uh-huh. So that is what inspired it. But this doesn't look like a good answer. So the texture, I was exploring texture as well with it. So I tried.
You tried beautifully. Yeah, that's for your
It's
first time too. That's amazing.
for my first time, yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah. You definitely should be proud of yourself for sure.
that's why it's right beside me here. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
she asked me, with all the components on there telling a story, if I do paint, and I said no. And it's like, are you sure? Maybe you should take it into, you should think about painting. But I never thought about it. It was a sense of feeling stressed that
Mm,
I decided that, okay, I need, I picked my daughter's painting and I started painting over, and it's like, okay, I need my own. Then I went to buy the supplies, and now It's become a great therapeutic session, and
Yeah.
also I don't have to buy somebody else's
Mhm.
painted.
Yeah, and you can start selling your own if you want to. Make
I
a little
can still
money. Become a
so
renowned international.
painter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that is the history of my painting.
I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah.
So how do you decide some of these themes or messages that you explore in your art?
Well, it's almost always rooted in lived experience, something that's
Mm,
happened to me, some story that I want to tell that I feel is transformative. Like I said, when I first started writing, I was digging deep into my emotional experiences, mostly things I was struggling with, things I was trying to figure out, big questions I was asking. And as I got older, I became activated around community, wanting to speak truth about things that are happening in my community. How can we find healing? How can we find more joy? So for example, the song you mentioned earlier, you had talked about
yes.
"Love Like Fire" that
Love like
I
fire.
that I sing with my band, the Poetic
Yes.
Diaspora. So that song I wrote in 2020, when the whole world saw Minneapolis light up in flames, right? Because I saw a lot of fire in my
Mm-hmm.
own community because of injustice, right? Because of the trauma we had experienced, because of the brutality and violence that had occurred. We were trying to find a way out. We were trying to find hope, trying to find healing. And I know that the fire can be really dangerous and really scary for a lot of people. But also, as a poet, I'm always looking for that metaphor. So I was like, you know what? Fire can be scary and dangerous, but fire can also bring hope and healing and warmth and light. And so I wanted to invite people into leaning in and seeing what's there. How can fire burn what needs to be burned away, and also light a path forward to a brighter future? And that's what that poem and that song is about. Getting us to kind of reorient ourselves to some of these experiences we've had, whether it's individually or collectively. How can we
Mm-hmm.
find a path forward? And
Yes.
that's where a lot of my stuff comes from. Is like, yo, I believe that there's always a new possibility. There's
Mm-hmm.
always hope. There's always healing. Sometimes you got to dig a little bit deeper to find it, but it's in
Mm-hmm.
there. It's always there. And that's what I've learned as an artist. Is I use my art as a tool to dig deeper into myself, into my community, into my ancestry, into my spirituality, into all these ways of the world, and when we can unearth something beautiful together.
Man, that sounds poetic to my ears. And okay, I'll behave. This is when I go this way.
Hey, yeah, get the snaps in, get the
Woo!
snaps in. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
No,
Yeah,
so a defining moment, something
defining
happened,
moment. Yeah,
or you decide that okay, I'm going to say transform the
yeah,
artistry. Yes.
yeah. I mean, I feel like I've had multiple defining moments. It's hard to just pick one. I can
Or
think,
two.
yeah, yeah, maybe a couple. One in
Yes.
particular when I was younger, and I was already drawing and writing nonstop, and kids would say, "Oh, you're the best drawer in the class," because I would draw caricatures of my
Yes.
teachers, like with really big heads and make them look all goofy, and then I would draw every cartoon character, and I would write stories and make my own comic books, and so a lot of my teachers and friends would say, "Hey, you're a great artist," but I was just doing it for fun, and then teachers started telling me, "Oh, you should enter this competition, or you should read this out loud to the class." And I was really shy and nervous. I was like, no, I don't want to share my innermost vulnerable feelings or something I really care about. If I share that with other people, they might judge me. They might make fun of me.
Mm,
I don't want to be humiliated in front of, my
everybody.
friends. And so for a long time, I didn't share because I was so nervous. But I always say, when you have people who believe in you more than you believe in yourself,
Mm,
they're not going to give up on you. And so they kept gently guiding me, gently encouraging me, and they gently nudged me out of my shell. And so I can remember one of the first times that I shared in front of the class. And I was surprised because nobody threw a shoe at my head. Like, nobody was making fun of me, trying to roast me. It was all love. I had kids who were my age who came up to me and they said, "Oh, thank you for sharing. I can relate. I can connect. I've had a similar experience." And that surprised me because I used to think I was the only one who thought the way that I thought, or the only one who felt the way that I felt. And so in those first few moments of sharing and being validated and affirmed and honored in my experience, I realized that I wasn't alone and that other people needed to hear what I said too. Because other people were saying, I never knew that. You encouraged me, you inspired me. And so that when I was younger, that's when I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I didn't know I was going to become a touring artist or become an author. I just knew that I wanted to connect with other human beings. And so I say I don't write for a living, I write for my life because it
Mm.
changed my life and it created the space for other people to also change their lives. And so ever since some of those early days of writing and performing and sharing what I had, that really influenced what I still do to this day. And then another definitive moment I would say would be I'd already been writing and performing for a long time. I was in college. I had a mentor who invited me to speak at a conference, at a youth conference. So I was one of the main speakers, and then they had an artist who was performing, a hip hop artist named Dave Shear, and I saw him perform, and I was like, "Yo, that's amazing!" Like he was just rocking the crowd. The all the students there were dancing with him. I was like, "Yo, I want to do that too." Like I rap, I do poetry, I perform, um, and so we started talking, and we became friends. And then fast
Mm-hmm.
forward, I ended up going on tour with him, and I started opening up for him, and then I would do pieces interwoven in his set. And then we started doing pieces together. We started collaborating. And before you know it, several years later, um, we had a duo and we were performing all over the country, winning awards, changing people's lives. And so that was a definitive moment for me because that opened me up to a whole new world of possibility of living on the road and seeing the United States and being able to practice my art in multiple spaces, in schools, in churches, nonprofits, businesses. And more recently, I've even been going to incarceration facilities
Mm-hmm.
and correctional facilities and sharing there because I think those are spaces that really need art. They really need more humanity. They need more liberation. And so I go to those spaces as well. But those have been moments that have, just really tremendously, profoundly shaped who I am as an artist and allowed me to do what I love. But I feel like I'm on this planet to do.
Wow. Many people are still trying to find why they are here. You have found yours. And I think one of one of the most important things also for me is purpose, right? That it takes each person a certain amount of time. Some do find it very early in their lives, whether
Yeah.
by intention or um, by some chance. And some of us, go through life's challenges to a certain point before we find really the path where we
Mm,
were intended. For myself, I remember being a visiting nurse, and one of my clients, she's deceased now, told me that you are not a nurse. I said,
mm,
well, I'm your nurse. It's like, no, I don't see you as a nurse. I see you in front of a massive crowd doing X, Y, and Z. Why are you still in nursing? And
mm,
I said, because I have passion. I love it.
yeah.
I get to hear people's stories, understand where people are coming from. It's like, no, you're not meant to be here.
Mm,
I said, okay. And but with time, she said this, maybe she died during the COVID era, not
mm,
of COVID.
yeah.
um, but with time, I have now come to really get what she's saying. Not that
Mhm.
I wasn't standing in front of people, but
Yeah.
when I stand in front of people now, when I'm doing this podcast, which goes to places that I don't even know. I don't know many of the people that watch us, but I'm privileged and really humbled that they take the time to listen to these conversations, that we have something substantive to share with them
Yeah.
about purpose, about intention, about inspiration, and motivating them. So, anyways.
That's amazing. Like you have such a powerful voice and a powerful platform. I bet you probably have no idea how many seeds you're planting, how many seeds you're cultivating and growing and flourishing all around the world, right? Man, that's what's beautiful when you find a sense of purpose and you find
Yes.
that calling is the depth of impact and transformation that can occur not
Hmm.
only for you but for all those
For
people
the
that you get to
people
touch and
around as
connect with.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, let's come to my favorite conversation on Black excellence and
Yeah.
cultural influence.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's go. Let's
Woo!
go.
Okay, okay, okay. So, what does Black excellence mean to you, and how do you embody it in your work?
Mm,
Mm,
I love that
mm,
question. I love that
mm.
question.
As my people
Yeah.
will say, it sounds like a jam question, like you're going to write exam.
Yo. That's. I love this question. So it makes me think about
Mm,
how I am a part of an ancestral lineage
mm,
of artistic excellence, Black artistic excellence. because there's so many people before me that have done just profoundly impactful, transformative work. So one of my favorite poets is Langston Hughes, right? Who came up in the 30s and 40s during the Harlem Renaissance in
Yes.
Harlem, New York, and he helped cultivate what's called jazz poetry. He would do poetry over jazz, and
Yes.
among many other things, poet, playwright. But I didn't learn about him until my parents got me this book from the library, just almost magical, like artists. Because the way I say magical, because it felt like magic, the way their words jump off of the page and come alive, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I was able to connect with them at a young age. Shout out to my parents for taking me to the library and exposing me to new authors and new artists. But I realized that that was part of my heritage. That
Yes.
was part of the lineage that I was stepping into,
Yes.
and carrying forward that legacy. Because
Yes.
folks like Langston Hughes, like he was a leader in the Harlem Renaissance. He was always pushing the art form forward. He
Mm-hmm.
was exploring and experimenting about what's next. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of folks will say him and other folks like Jill Scott Heron, who came much later, in the 60s and 70s. But he would have poems like "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised."
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
For those who may not be familiar, I highly recommend checking out Langston Hughes, just Scott Heron, poets of the Black Arts movement in the Harlem
Mm-hmm.
Renaissance and also in the 60s and 70s. But I name these folks because to me they embody Black excellence. They embody this spirit of perseverance, because what we have to understand is what was happening in those eras. There was a
The
lot of
civil
segregation.
rights. Yes.
There was a lot of
Yes.
poverty, right? Like in
Yes.
the 30s, that was the Dust Bowl. That was
Mm-hmm.
the Great Depression.
The depression.
Yep, the
Yes.
Great Depression, and folks like everywhere were struggling to eat, right? However, during the Harlem Renaissance, folks still came together and they pulled their resources together. They had patrons. They had creative ways of group economics
Mm-hmm.
and cultural ways to cultivate power and resistance and persistence together to make it through those tough times, right? And now that's not only in the 30s, right? I see that happening through almost every single era. Every generation has their iteration
Yes.
of ways that they've carried forward this legacy. So that to me is what Black excellence is about. It's about this resilience to still
Mm-hmm.
create something beautiful, something joyful in the midst of the struggle. That's what Langston Hughes did. That's what Jill Scott Heron did. That's what Nikki Giovanni, rest in peace and power. I
Peace.
got to
Yeah.
meet her just a few months ago. She's passed now, but
Yes.
I'm so humbled and honored and grateful to have been able to meet her and to talk to her and tell her how much she's meant to me. But it's these ancestors, right, that have paved the way for us. I would not be who I am if not for them. I believe in what's called Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a South
Mm-hmm.
African concept that means I am because we
Because
are.
we are. Yes.
A person is a person through other people.
Yes.
Dr. King talked about it a lot. He would say, we need to learn to live together as brothers or sisters, and I would say as
Mm-hmm.
siblings, or we perish as fools, right? We're
That
woven
is
into
true.
one garment of destiny. And so thinking about that, it's like I'm a part of something much bigger than myself. I'm
Mm-hmm.
one voice of the collective many. When I stand in a room, I don't stand alone. I stand in the strength of 4,000 ancestors. You feel me? Like they talk about how there's actually scientific research that shows that in order for us to be alive today, we've had to have 4,000 ancestors survive. That means at least 4,000 people before us had to have survived famine, disease, war, genocide, slavery, and God knows what else. They survived for us to still be alive today, right? They survived, and we're still here. And not only that, but this is what really blows my mind is that through the study of what's called epigenetics, they
Yes.
show how the information is encoded in our DNA from our ancestors. But the way that they survived, that resilience, that healing wisdom, that power and liberation that lived inside of their bodies
Is
also live
passed
inside of
on.
our bodies,
Yeah.
right? That is Black excellence to me. That's Black excellence. We get to carry forward that rich ancestral legacy, not only for ourselves, but for generations that are to come. Like, what are our children and our children's children, our great grandchildren, what are they going to say about us? Are we doing what we can in making the sacrifices, putting the heartfelt love and intention into what we create, the world we're creating right now, so that the future generations can have a better life, right? They talk about planting trees under whose shade you may not sit.
Yes.
That's what we get to do. That's what Black excellence is about.
Yes. When you were speaking, I didn't realize I had a Maya Angelou's book. Actually,
Yeah. Still I
his plan.
rise.
No, actually, when I think about myself, so I'm
Yeah,
going to read that to you
yeah,
and
yeah.
to the audience listening to us on Nana Yaya Bua podcast. Yesterday was actually Ghana's Independence Day, March
Oh wow.
6th. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and Maya's lived in Ghana for a couple of years and taught at the University of Ghana. In my
Mhm.
first collection of poetry, the person that actually helped edit the book was taught by Maya Angelou. So
Mm, yeah, that's
sometimes,
amazing.
yes, sometimes you don't realize how I didn't meet her personally, but she has still impacted my writing,
Absolutely, absolutely.
and
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
and continues to impact my writing.
Hmm.
I've had occasions in Ghana. It's like, oh, you write like Maya. It's like, no, I don't write like Maya. I just write like myself.
Mm,
Maybe similar woman experiences or whatnot,
hmm.
but I was still humbled, to for that reference because it's a big deal. It's
Yeah.
a big deal. So I'll just do the first part. When
Mm,
I think about myself, when I think about myself, I almost laugh myself to death. My life has been one great big joke. A dance that's worked, a song that spoke. I laugh so hard I almost choke
mm,
when I think about myself.
yeah. I love
My
that.
oh
Yeah,
my
Mama
oh my.
Maya.
Mama Maya, who
I love
is
that we
now an
continue.
ancestor.
I love that we continue to find ways to say their names and to share their work because I think that's one of the most beautiful ways we can honor
Yeah.
them, right, and carry
Hmm.
forward their legacy
Yes.
by talking about them often, sharing their work, studying their work.
Hmm.
That's what they would want. So,
That's true. For sure. That's true.
yeah.
So, um, I think we might. What kind of responsibility do you feel as a Black artist in shaping our cultural narrative? Is
Mm,
it conscious or unconscious? Because I think during we're talking about the Harlem Renaissance, they were doing what they needed to do to keep their spirits alive
yeah.
during a critical period of time. But as we're looking at it from this point into the past, we look at it as the transformed literature. I am trying to figure out whether it was consciously done or unconsciously done, right?
Mm,
But for you and
mm,
I at this stage right now, majority of my background, well, I've spent more time here in Canada than in Ghana, but I still have Ghanaian influences because I went to high school there and university here, right? So my work will be a bridge, tapping into Ghana and also bridging here.
yeah.
Yours is purely African American. So mine is Black Canadian, Ghanaian,
Hmm.
African American.
Hmm.
Um, how do you feel as a Black artist in shaping cultural narratives?
Mm. Yeah, there's so many rich points to touch on. I'm like, which one of the wells can I dip into? Because then you also reminded me. I talk a lot about my Jamaican ancestry. So my mom was born and raised in Mandeville, Jamaica, and so I care a
Where
lot about like bringing forward
where was
what's
she
in.
born?
She was born and raised in Mandeville, Jamaica.
Mandeville, Jamaica.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, before she immigrated to the states as a young girl. But I go
Okay.
back. I go back often. I have some friends in Jamaica, and I like to work on. There's a pineapple farm in Maroon
Okay.
Town, so I like to work in Maroon Town. And one of the things, so this connects to your question, is talking about the historical pieces. I learn more about my Jamaican ancestry and hear the stories of Jamaicans who fought against British colonialism, right? Particularly in Maroon Town, the Maroons. They're called the Maroons of the Blue Mountains, and they
Yes.
work with Queen Nanny, who may have been Ghanaian.
Who
Queen
is
Nanny of the Maroons,
Ghanaian?
they say she might have been Ghanaian and don't know for sure, but she's revered as one of the most highly esteemed revolutionaries who helped found their
Yes.
nation, Queen Nanny of the Maroons, because she helped fight against the British colonists to try to enslave, or they did enslave
Hmm.
the Africans and brought them to Jamaica. However, they fought so fiercely because she was a military strategist and she knew how to weave together twigs and branches. They created camouflage. They said this might have been one of the first times they created camouflage. And she knew how to do like concoctions with herbs. She created like these poisons. And anyways, I don't want to go too deep into it. Definitely got to do your research and follow that story. But I say that because I put those stories into my work, into my theater productions. into my poems. My book that I just came out with last year called Unearthing Us is
Unearthiness.
all about, it's a collection of poems all about what I've experienced when I visit Jamaica, how I'm learning about the cultivation of the land, the cultivation of the people, and how there's an interconnection between how we grow and flourish. Because a lot of our ancestors, they were just trying to survive. But we want to move from just surviving to thriving, right? And so I think when I first started as a kid, my kind of vision and mission and purpose, it wasn't fully formed yet, and maybe subconsciously it was about surviving, right, and expressing this vulnerable story of how I was making it through different struggles in life. But now at this point in time in my life, I'm like, no, we about to thrive, baby. We gonna flourish. We're gonna be sovereign and empowered because I know who I am and I know who my ancestors are. I want other people to realize that and to tap into the fullness of their power. Because if we look at the political landscape that we're in right now, it's like
Oh,
a dumpster fire, right? It's like I talk about looking at the news. They shouldn't call it the news. They should call it the worst things that are happening near you, because that's what it feels like, right? This hellscape of a reality. However, I do also believe that there's a wellspring of well-being that we could tap into, right? And that is my purpose now as an artist. And I do that very intentionally, very intentionally. Every single time that I have a stage or a microphone or any sort of platform, I want to speak life. I want to speak truth. I want to speak transformation. So when I'm writing, when I'm performing, it's not. It's not the performance to transform, right? And so I want to create space where other people can tap into that deeper sense of connectedness, of wholeness, of their true power, because that's what my ancestors did for me. So I think that's what we're on this planet to do is we only rise as high as we lift each other, right?
yes,
We shine brighter together. So how do we do this as a collective? How do we do
yes.
this together? And so really, that's something I'm extremely passionate about. I want to offer people new ways of thinking, new ways of embodying, new ways of being in community, ways that are connected to our wholeness, to our true selves, to our power. So that's what I'm all about.
That is deep. It's you are able to do that. I gather from this conversation that you're able to do that because you learned your background, you learned your ancestry, and you stayed rooted in that. So nobody can tell you who you are. You know
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know you, so you are able to tap into it and stand rooted and tell the world this is who I am. But that's the difference between yourself and many others that say they do what they do but they don't know who they are truly are to the core, or what
Mm,
kind of morals, say, morals that they encompass, so they have no moral compass
yeah,
to go by, but you have yours.
yeah,
So that makes you, when you stand, when you are delivering, it's like all the ancestral powers come with you.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I'm a deeply spiritual person, and I feel like I'm
Mhm,
guided by that faith in the Most High, that faith in my ancestors, that faith in
mhm.
something bigger than myself is pulling me
Yeah,
forward,
yeah,
right? And I tell people, you got to find that for yourself. Like I can't
yeah.
find that for you. I could create space for you to dig deeper
Mhm.
and to learn that, but you have to find that for yourself, and you got to write your own story because if you don't
Yes.
write it, someone else is going to try to write it for you, and you might not like it, right? It
Uh,
might be some things that aren't really true, that aren't really authentic. But how do we tap deeper into that integrity, that authenticity, that truer sense of self,
yes.
that knowing, right? That we all have it. It's all in there. Sometimes you got to dig a little bit deeper to get to it, but it's there for
Yes.
sure. Yeah. Like I just gotta say, just real quick, like you're inspiring me so much. I feel like I'm getting a beautiful history lesson and just kind of soaking up the wisdom and the knowledge. But I think this is important for us to create space for these sorts of conversations because
Yes.
what you're speaking on is our history, is our ancestral lineage, is our Black excellence. Because what I was taught in school when I was younger was not what we're talking about now. The first time I learned about Black history was about slavery. But I love how one scholar says that slavery isn't Black history. Slavery disrupted Black history because before colonization, as you're saying, we were royals, we were warriors, we were architects and
So
artists and scientists and mathematicians
let me
and
give
builders of
you,
civilization, right?
yes,
And we don't always learn that. We need to continue to learn that.
if you can figure out your lineage, you you can do that. They will give you that honor of doing that. There
I
is
do want
all,
to figure that out for myself too. Like I've done some research into,
yes,
as you can already tell, I've done some research into my ancestry, but I want to
yes,
dig as far back as I
yes,
possibly can and locate if I can locate the precise tribe that I'm a part of, that would be amazing. I would love to
Yes.
learn that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, so let's get to storytelling, racism, and social justice.
Yes.
So, why do you think, why is storytelling such a powerful tool in spoken word and music?
Hmm. Yeah, I think stories are healing, are transformative, and because the reason why I just got to give my own story is when I've heard stories from people who have different lives than me, different lived experience, that changes my heart. That changes my mind. Like maybe I thought one thing and then I meet somebody who lived it and they can actually tell me what happened, then that opens me up to new possibilities. I think that's what stories do to us. Like they open us up and they provide a pathway to deeper empathy and compassion and this communal connection. And so I think that's you can't really argue with somebody's story. You can argue about other things, but you can't argue with someone like this is what happened to me. This is my lived experience. This is my story. You have to take that and listen to it. I know you're a storyteller as well. You talked about Anazazi and the spider, and you know how that stimulates the imagination, how that allows people to enter into this new world of possibility. And I think that's what we do with stories as well, especially when we're talking about justice, creating the world we long to live in together. You gotta hear the stories of people who live in different parts of the country, different parts of the world than you, who maybe grew up in a different socioeconomic status than you did, who are a different race, a different gender. We have to expose ourselves to these diverse stories, and that's going to help us open up more to create the world that works for everybody, not just some folks, a world that works for everybody, and we can stop harming ourselves and harming each other,
Yeah.
right? And so that's I care a lot about that. I create spaces like I'm a community organizer. I've done community organizer training, and I do a lot of teaching around how to build like multiracial coalitions of solidarity that are working towards healing and justice. And so yeah, I think stories are the foundation. Stories are what's gonna help us show up and find our why. Why do we even care about making the world a better place? You got to know your why. If you don't know your why, you're not going to get very far. But if you know your why, there's no how you can't overcome. So you got to know
We
that
still,
why.
some of us are still trying to find our whys. Leave us
Yeah,
alone.
it's the root. The why is like the root in the tree.
Yeah.
What is it? Marcus Garvey says a people who don't know their history is like a tree without roots, right? How do we know our why? How do we know where we come from? That's gonna help us know where we're going, and that's all a part of our stories, right?
Yes.
And so I'll give you one more example here about stories when it comes to racial justice and social justice. Growing up, a lot of the stories I was given around a boy becoming a man were around, okay, you always got to be strong, you always got to be tough, you got to protect yourself, and I understood that was to help me navigate the world. But some of those stories weren't helpful at certain times where I needed to release some of what I was holding. Maybe it was too heavy. A lot of the diseases that we have as men can
Yes.
come from us bottling up a lot of this intense energy, intense emotion, and we carry it, and it comes stress and a strain on our minds and our bodies, and some men will even die because of it. But thankfully, I learned a new story, a new story that said I don't always have to have all the answers. I don't always have to be strong and figure it out. That I can release, I can let go, and I can have space. Because emotions aren't meant to be repressed; they're meant to be expressed. That I can find a safe enough space to be vulnerable and release and express my emotions. That I can move through the world lighter, with more integrity, and I can show up as my fullest, unapologetic self. But if I keep everything bottled up inside, then that's how I'm gonna move through the world, and I'm gonna start whatever was harming me. That's gonna harm other people. It'll come out. They say hurt people, but heal people,
Heal.
and
Yes.
feeling is healing. So when I talk about stories, my story as a boy becoming a man, I had to learn that I can be strong and I can be vulnerable. I can express my emotions, and that's actually how we create a better world for women as well, right? You talk about, and I love that you say that because there's pros and cons, but there was a more communal kind of village oriented familiar
Yes.
way of doing life, and
Yes.
colonization disrupted that
It did.
disrupted
Yeah.
that story. And so going back to the importance of sharing our stories is like even you now sharing like, hey, this is one way of being that we used to practice in community. We can reclaim some of that just by sharing the story, just by letting people know that this is one possibility. I think about possibility models, right? And And what are the possibility models out there, like people and organizations who are doing this work of healing, of justice, of decolonization? Because decolonization has a story too, right? And colonization has a story. You talk about they came in and they were upset that the women was running things, and they didn't want that. That comes from a male dominated patriarchal toxic mindset. Instead of saying how can we find ways of being together in the world where we're honoring each other, where we have a shared decision making process, where we protect and care for one another. That's the type of world I want to live in. That's the story that I'm writing. I'm rewriting the story, right? There's a story out there that's a story of violence and colonization and oppression. I want a story of healing and of wholeness and connection. That's the story that we get to write together. That's why stories are important.
Oh, Lord have mercy. That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. Guys, you are watching the Nana Yaya Work podcast with my now one of my favorite people, Joe
Yeah.
Davis.
Love, love, love.
Hey, one of my favorite people that I can bother these days,
Hit me
Joe
up anytime.
Davis.
Anytime, anytime.
It's so amazing to have you on this podcast. Um, but we're not done yet. We're not done yet. Um, we did talk about ancestry and connection to Africa and uh, but particularly your connection to Jamaica, um, who were mainly transported from the continent of Africa, the West African sub-region. When you are on stage, right, performing, and I've seen you, not seen you, but
In
I've
person, the
seen
videos.
the
Yeah.
videos of you
Mhm.
performing on stage. Do you feel a spiritual connection or ancestral connection when performing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly. Before I even perform, I say a prayer and I ask that, the Most High will speak through me. I feel like I'm just a vessel.
Mm,
Um, and I want to speak words that are always gonna bring people to healing and to wholeness and to
mm,
their God given purpose on this planet. And so I definitely feel that connection whenever I'm speaking on any platform, even this right now. This is spiritual as well. And so um, I really see myself just as an instrument. Just as you see somebody playing the trumpet,
yeah.
and they're blowing through and beautiful music is coming out. I'm an instrument as well, and it's my hope and my prayer, and my heartfelt intent that like the spirit can just flow through me, and that has a lot to do with my daily practices,
Mm-hmm.
my spiritual practices, and my times of prayer and meditation, and just listening to people tell their stories, um, and that comes through whenever I'm sharing in community, because my poetry and my music and my art is only as deep as my spiritual practice. It's only as connective as my listening is. I think you can listen long enough to hear somebody's humanity. You can listen long enough to listen somebody into life. And so when I am listening to your story, I'm listening to the stories of my friends and my family members, or even just neighbors or strangers. I'm really like drinking deeply of that wellspring, and I'm like, this is something beautiful. This is something powerful. This is a sacred and holy experience, and that's what allows me to write the way that I write, because I love people. I love my community. I love my ancestors, and whenever I'm writing, I'm kind of tapping into those stories, tapping into that deep wellspring of well-being, that spiritual sustenance. So it absolutely is a profound experience for me whenever I get the opportunity to share in that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy moly. As somebody would say, are you sure it's not hocus pocus?
Yeah. Hey, some people, hey, they're gonna believe whatever they want to believe. I know who I am, and I know, how I connect. And I really want to honor that too, because sometimes people want to
Yeah.
argue about it. They're like, oh, you gotta practice the way I practice. You gotta believe the way I believe. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, this world has 7 billion people on it. There's gonna be 7 billion practices, 7 billion beliefs, 7 billion ways to show up in your purpose. I'm not going to define that for you, just like you're not going to define that for me.
Yes.
I know who I am. I want you to know who you are and show up
Yes.
authentically, unapologetically, in your full self. That's what it's all about.
Yes.
You know?
No, you're right. There are too many fakes. There are too
Yeah.
many fakes out there that like telling you an interview that I did, that I said is that the energy was not in alignment.
Yeah,
Like you and I have this beautiful conversation going on. And if I try and push, that means the frequency is not there.
yeah,
The
yep.
energy is not alignment. And so we
Hmm.
can't even dig deep into that human conversation that we need to have and to bring out what people need to hear. Because even if only one person listens to this conversation, that means it was meant for that person,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? Yes.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we are here having this conversation, and I got intrigued to speak to you. It's like,
Likewise, it's mutual. Yeah, you blessed me too. I feel inspired. I'm gonna go back and listen to this conversation a few more times. There's some gems that you offered me as well.
yes. And that's the opportunity that I get with this podcast, that to learn so much, to
Yeah,
dialogue so much. And one of the conversations I had with Morgan Campbell, who is an author, was that I read his book and did a conversation, and I think I got more from the conversation than
yeah,
because he gave me more insight into an autobiography I'm writing, that I have lapses. I'm only at the tip of the story, which I thought was done, but there was more unpacking to be done. So you see, that is the benefit, that is the beauty that I find when I speak to people from different walks of life doing different things. You all so much inspire me,
mm,
that and bring the best out of me. And yeah, I truly appreciate that. I truly
that's
appreciate that. So I'm not sure of your, experience, or more of your experience and views about Africa and Jamaica, say, and narratives in the mainstream when it comes to um, their art. What is your experience like?
I love the connection. I try to make as many connections as I
Mhm.
can. One of my favorite artists is a Nigerian American artist, Toby Nwigwe, and I would love to.
Oh,
I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. I'm
no,
trying to collaborate with
isn't
him. Yeah.
don't try me, try Jesus.
Yes. Yeah. 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 And so that's one of the people that's high on my list to do a collaboration with. So we got to make
Yes,
that happen.
yes.
But yeah, that's one of the connections. I've actually collaborated with an artist from Accra, Kwame Koda. He's a visual artist, and
Mm,
he's designed a lot of the images for my Ancestors Rising series. So it's an
okay.
Afrofuturistic theater series that I produce every year, last several years, and he's been the visual artist, one of the visual artists for that, and
Hmm.
so that's one of the connections I have as well. But yeah, I'm always open to more
I
connections for sure. I
didn't
think I got
realize
one
you were
right here.
into Afrofuturism.
Yeah.
Jeez. Once upon a time, that was my it.
Yo, Octavia Butler.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
she was
yes,
my
yes.
gateway. She was the one who got me into it. And then Black
And
Panther, Wakanda, and
yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
There is a book on Black futurism by, geez, I've forgotten the name. It's
Mm,
somewhere in the library over there, over the years. Yeah.
mm,
Because at a certain point, I was really intrigued by it, and, how to. And so I did a poem when I was doing my MED, in, which was inspired by Black Afro, how do we call it?
Futurism.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, you got to show me. I
Eh,
want to hear it. You don't necessarily have to do it now, but I would love to hear that poem in the future.
Okay, I
Yeah,
will share it. I will have to look for it and
yeah.
share it with you. Yes,
Please
yes,
do.
yes.
Please do. Yeah.
Okay, um, so you said you've collaborated with some, with Kwame Koder and then you would also love to collaborate with Toby
I want
Ingwe.
to. Yeah,
Yes, you want to
yeah.
collaborate. Aside from the two, any other person comes to mind who speaks your language?
Hmm. You're saying just as part of like the African diaspora
A-
or Jamaica? I mean,
any.
if we're talking Jamaica, we gotta mention Bob Marley. That's my number one favorite artist of all time. I love Bob Marley. I feel like I might have even met him in a dream once. Like, I mean, I did meet him in a dream, but it felt real. Like, and so yeah, I love Bob Marley. He's one of my big influences, especially with my
Hmm.
family being Jamaican.
Hmm.
And he wrote and sung with such passion for his people, and he was able to even bridge these socio-political divides and
Mm-hmm.
bring reggae to a worldwide stage, and not just the music of reggae, but also like
The
the
message.
principles of reggae, meaning like it's about uniting the African diaspora. It's about empowering our people for liberation. It's about oneness, right, and healing. And that's Bob Marley was really about that life. He put that into all of his music, into everything he said and did. So that's why he's such a huge influence for me for sure. He talked a lot about the connection with Africa as well, with Haile Selassie. That was someone he highly revered as a spiritual leader, and in Ethiopia. Yeah, so there's lots of I could talk forever about those connections. I love digging deep into the roots. I'm sure you could
Yes.
probably offer me some new folks to connect with too. I would love to learn more. So
We will work on that for sure. We can
yeah,
definitely work on that.
yeah,
So let's come to your work on stage. Because sometimes spoken word, you just think the poet is in front, just him or her do their
hmm
thing, and that's it. But this is a stage, like orchestra, like choir performance, creme de la creme,
hmm
right? So
yeah.
when you're doing that, what elements are most important to you?
I think a lot about what it's gonna be like from the audience perspective. And I want to invite people into an immersive experience that's multi-sensory. It's going to touch on all the senses, and that they're going to feel like they're an active participant in the show. If you come to one of my shows that I'm curating, that I'm producing, I don't want you just to be sitting in your seat as a passive observer. No, 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 that's not how we getting down. You got to come in, and I want you to be moved. I want you to be uplifted, like metaphorically and literally. I want people to get up out of their seats. I want them to clap. I want them to snap. I want them to hoot and holler. I want them to give some sort of energy into the space, because we're gonna give them a lot of energy. I want them to receive the energy. So I'm very intentional about those details when it comes to being multi-sensory, multi-dimensional, multimedia forms of art. So there's like the music, right? Just a part of it. I'm very intentional about the music too, how that's gonna like ease people into the space, like perk up their ears. Maybe we'll start with something smooth and soft, depending on the vibe that we want, or we might come out hard hitting too, right? But intentional about the music, and I always like to create an emotional arc to every one of my sets. So like, what emotional journey am I taking people on? Are we starting joyful and hopeful? Are we starting from a place of questioning, maybe lower energy, and we kind of raise the vibration, raise it to something more high end. And so I play around with that kind of stuff. It's an artistry in and of itself, curating and producing a show. Like that's where I've taken it to the next level. Because when I started off when I was younger, it was just the poetry, right? I would just write a poem, or I would speak a poem. But then I realized, you know what? I want to do more than just do poetry. I want to tell a bigger story. And so that's when I started. One of my best friends, he would play the guitar, and I was still in high school and college, and I would freestyle while he played the guitar. We would make up songs, and sometimes the songs weren't really that good. We were just having fun in his mama's basement making music. We started a band, and then we got better. We started practicing, and we actually won the battle of the bands one time. And so to kind of show this evolution of poetry, opening up into creating songs. So I would use the lyrics of my poems for the lyrics of those songs, and they became larger songs. And those songs turned into albums. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to just do music that I'm doing at a show or in the studio. I want to put on my own show. And so I would start to curate my own concerts where I would perform. I would invite other artist friends to perform, and it became an entire musical production. And then I had a mentor. So shout out to Jay Otis Powell. He's passed away. He was an elder in the community, a giant, a pillar of an artist, poet, playwright, speaker. Man, man, just the likes of which the world has really seen. And he challenged me because he came to one of my productions. I invited him to be a part of it, and afterwards we were sitting, kind of like the energy was settling, and we're sitting around, and folks are coming up to me, and they're giving me praises. They're like, "That was the best show I ever saw. That was phenomenal." And my elder is sitting right next to me, right? Elder J. Otis Powell sitting right next to me, and he's hearing all of this. And so, like, the opinion that I care about the most
Yes.
is his, right?
Mm-hmm.
People who came to the show, they love it, cool, I'm happy with that. But I turned to my elder, and I'm like, "So what'd you think? What'd you think?" Because I curated the whole show, right? I
Mm-hmm.
was my brainchild. It was my baby from top to bottom. I designed it. And so I wanted to know what he thought of it. And he just takes a deep breath and just coolly, calmly, he says, you can do more. There's more. And, after getting showered all these praises, he's telling me, he's like, you're not challenging yourself enough. He's like, you're not taking yourself to the edge of your comfort zone. You can move beyond and get to a place where you feel a little uncomfortable. You're taking a risk. You're being vulnerable, and you're stretching yourself. And so what he was doing was he was pushing me to go beyond where I was, and to push the envelope, to push the art form even further. And because of him, I was like, I'm gonna take bigger risks. I'm gonna do something I never done before. And so I actually was like, I'm gonna write a theater production. I'm gonna write, direct, and produce a theater production. And so I did. My band and other artists that I know, I just reached out to them, asked them if they wanted to collaborate. I'd never done nothing like that before, but we did it, and that's how I birthed Ancestors Rising. And so just listening to J. Otis Powell, listening to my ancestors, listening to my heart and my spirit, and this felt like a story that needed to be in the world. And so that's when I integrated all of the art forms that we're talking about: poetry, music, dance, theater. It's all in one place at one time. And so I've been doing that series the past several years. We're going to do another one this summer. And so that's something that I've committed to, kind of having a rhythm of producing an
When in the summer?
Afrofuturistic ancestor series every summer, called Ancestors Rising. So,
When in the summer?
so the next showing is going to be in August. It'll
Oh.
be, I think it's August 21st through the
Mm-hmm.
24th at the Southern Theater in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So if you make your way out here to see it in real time, in real person, hey, you will not regret it. It's one of the biggest things that I create in my artist career. Every year it gets bigger and better. So
Yeah.
yeah.
As you speaking, and I kept thinking about a few creative endeavors that I let slide. Like when I moved to this new area, I started what I called circle of diverse voices, which is
Mm,
bringing different creatives onto the stage. The
yeah.
first time wasn't, I didn't get a lot of traction, so I dropped it. But years before then, I used to do this program called Head Above Waters, and
Mm,
it was spoken word poets and musicians. And
yeah.
the last one, I think the last but one was, I didn't realize that I had pulled only Ghanaian musicians in Ontario, Canada, and it was a great show. I was getting traction, and then I actually produced a Nigerian musician who had newly come. But then I realized that working with musicians, some of them have too much ego, that I can't
Mm.
stand it, and
Yeah,
too
it does
much
happen. It does happen.
pomposity, that it's like, okay, I have invested money into this, time
Yeah.
and everything.
Hmm.
You do your rehearsal, get it down right, and let me push it. So those two were the last, and then I stopped. But as you're
Yeah.
speaking, I kept thinking that if I had pushed it to this point, it would have had a different growth. So I'm now
It's not too late.
rethinking.
It's not too
Yes.
late. You can still do it.
So I'm now rethinking that to bring Circle of Diverse Voices back,
Yes.
because I'm also rethinking of coming back on stage, because I've started rewriting some of my poetry as well, which I started this year at, how do we call it? My Wish for the World.
Mm,
Uh, yeah. So you speaking, and it's like, ooh, he's inspiring me.
I
He keeps
love it.
inspiring me.
Yeah.
If I get into a tiff, I can just connect with him.
Yeah. Hey, you got to come
So
out.
thank you,
If you could come out
thank
to
you.
Minneapolis, Minnesota, we'll make sure you get to the best restaurants and have the best experience.
If you buying, I'm eating.
Hey, let's go. We come out here. We'll do lunch. I got you.
Okay,
I got
I
you.
I will hold you to that. I will
Absolutely.
hold you to that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so, what's next for you? Any
Mm,
exciting projects aside from what we've talked about? You have this show coming up in August,
yes.
which I will look at the dates and hopefully, knock on wood, if able,
Yeah.
show my face
Right on.
there.
Right on.
Yes. What other
Yeah.
exciting projects we should look out for?
Yeah. So I'm working on another book right now. Probably won't be out for maybe another year or so. But it'll be my fourth book, fourth collection of poems.
Oh.
Um, really centering on bodies. It might be called body poems, but it's just exploring this idea of how do we embody poetry in our everyday life, and particularly in finding a space within ourselves of rootedness,
Mm,
groundedness, and communal connection. So that's something I'm working on. I'm also I'm launching a new program that I've developed called Finding Your Freedom Practice, which uses art as a catalyst for people to deepen their mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And so it's a whole community and it's a collective of artists. So people can tap into that. It's subscription based, monthly subscription based, and they get access to exclusive content. And we're building community, we're building practices together, and it's all centered on holistic wellness, using the arts as like the foundation for us to dig deeper into all these ways of being together. So really excited about that. That's been just soothing for me to be a part of that work. So yeah.
I am loving it. I am loving it. One of the questions that one of the guys that I work with a lot in Ghana, he's also a poet, and he's made a living in Ghana out of poetry production and everything. So even with a play production, Aquili, he's the one that did the directing. Yes, I was the producer. He did the direction for
Yeah,
me
yeah,
in Ghana because I'm not in Ghana, so he did everything. And
nice. Yeah,
it's sometimes you don't think you could make a living out of the art, but there's a way to do it. And many times, artists cannot find or are unable to find that way. I think at some
yeah.
point we will have to talk about the business of art.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a
Yes,
whole other conversation too. That's
yes,
a whole episode right there.
yes.
But it is
Okay.
important to know how to balance that, because I think a lot of artists, myself included, and many of my friends that I've talked with, we get into this because we care about creating. We
Mm-hmm,
have something that we want to offer the world, but we don't get into it because we're trying to make $1 million. And
mm-hmm,
so that can be intention sometimes, because in order to build a life where you're creating, you have to have money. So you have to learn the business. You have to have some financial literacy in order to have a sustainable business structure, a sustainable business system that allows you to create. And that's something that I'm always ongoingly learning, because I didn't grow up in a family that had a lot of financial literacy. We were kind of, just maybe middle class, lower middle class at times. And so just learning that has been a whole journey in of itself that I really hope a lot more artists can tap into, because I think we need more artists in the world. We need more people who are able to sustain their creative practice and offer the world what we need.
yeah.
But because of money, they can't always do what they want to do, what they need to do. So
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. My brother from another mother. Joe, this has been an amazing, amazing conversation. Your work is truly inspiring. Thank you so much. And I appreciate your stories. They are one of a kind. They are Joe Davis's stories. And so if my listeners, my audience, because this is both a podcast, audio and visual, if my audience are looking for you, where would they find you? Your social media handles, website, and etc.
yes, you can find me at Joe Davis Poetry on
Mm-hmm.
anything. If you just Google Joe Davis Poetry, I'll pop up. I'm Googleable. But you can also go to joedavispoetry.com.
Cool.
That's my website. Or
Mm-hmm.
Joe Davis Poetry on any social media platform.
Mm-hmm.
That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter or X, whatever they got going on over there. TikTok, everything. It's Joe Davis Poetry on everything. You can find me.
Yes, yes. Guys, thank you for joining us. And to our listeners, if this conversation resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe, share, and continue supporting Black artists who are shaping, the culture and history. Until next time, stay inspired. And thank you so much. This has
Thank
been
you.
beautiful. This is beautiful.
Thank you.
Splice Original.